Last time we did the two sections here. We're going to move on, do this large section here, and then move on and then do the stem. I originally said we weren't going to do any leaves at the bottom. We're going to do some leaves at the bottom, little shadow at the bottom, and then we'll be done. Remember that we're working light to dark. So whatever colors that you have, a couple of, you can use yellows, oranges, reds, and browns to get the value. And you have to move quickly. It is alcohol based, and so we want to make sure that we try to keep the paper wet. Make sure you have a paper underneath your paper so that it does not saturate on your sketchbook or on your desk, but that it just soaks into the paper underneath it. This yellow is fading a little bit, so it's not quite as strong as it once was. That's okay, it's just my undercoat. And then quickly moving on to your slightly darker layer, which is my orange. This is called light orange. Then moving on to a color called Honey, which is also a light orange, a little bit darker than the light orange I just used. Again, trying to keep the paper wet, moving quickly, blending one area into another. This is apricot. You can see things are smoothing out now. So that yellow went on a little streaky, but it's going on pretty smooth right now. Using the chisel tip, okay, covering more area, as this area is a little bit larger. Went back to my yellow to achieve that blend. Leaving a little space between the edge and the color, so if it bleeds over a little bit, if there's a highlight right there, that will remain present. Light's kind of coming from the upper right area. Going back over with my lighter colors to get that blend better. I don't want a sudden change in color, just like when we're working in pencil, we don't want a sudden change in our gray values either. This is a Chinese orange. Now that pumpkin orange is really starting to fill in a little bit. I'm going to start adding a little bit of brown for those darker values. This is a dark suntan color, brush tip. Another light brown. So use the colors that you have. I'll go a little bit darker down at the bottom and really bring that shadow out a little bit more. Okay, so you got a pretty decent blend there. This right here, this little highlight, a little bit strong for me. So I'm going to try to spend a little bit of time kind of softening that a little bit. Maybe got to bring up the light orange just a little bit more. Just kind of go over that edge. Alright, but it's pretty well matched. This brown might be a little bit darker than this, but they're pretty well matched. You can always go over the old piece as well. Alright, and then we repeat that process for this next section over on this side. And just pull those darker colors into the light, up towards the top, where the light is coming from. You can always go back to the lighter colors and achieve that blend. Moving back into my browns, dark suntan. All right, and then just got these 3 little areas in the back. They're a little bit smaller, so it won't take quite as long, but the process remains the same. Go from light values, light colors to dark. The stem obviously will be more of a brown, so we'll do that last. Pick a couple of browns, a light brown and a dark brown. Use the smaller tip. Most of these markers are dual tip. You'll have a thick side and a thin side. So it's a smaller area. It makes sense to use the thin part. Alright, so the pumpkin is mostly done. What we're going to do finally is just add a few leaves to this as if it's sitting in a pumpkin patch or whatever. And the leaves that we're going to use, actually before I do that, I'm going to kind of clean up these edges down there a little bit. I got some lines some color that bled over. And if you have that same issue, you can just make those black lines a little thicker and kind of swallow up some of that color. I'm not going to be too worried about it right now. These leaves are just flat on the ground and kind of, I'm imagining maple leaves. So these leaves kind of have scallops on them. Not a whole bunch. And don't make them all the same. Don't make them nice and pretty. Make them kind of random. They'll look more natural that way. All right, and then we'll ink those. Again, just trace the line you've already done. And these lines on the inside are the structure of the leaves. They look like branches. Right, and then erase the pencil lines with your kneadable eraser. And then, like, we picked two browns, a light brown and a dark brown for the stem. We're going to pick a couple of greens and do the same thing for the leaves. Again, start light. And then work in some darker value on top of it. And we'll use the thin side. As it is a smaller area. All right. And the very last thing we're going to do is pick a couple of grays. If all you have is a really dark gray, I'd be very cautious of doing this, because you want this to be a non-oppressive shadow. Don't want to be super duper dark like an oil slick. You just want to put a little bit of gray value underneath here to kind of give it some foundation, some base. And so this is a light gray, light warm gray that I have. Just any fine finishing touches. And then don't forget to sign it.